G'day, I'm Alister Christie from LearnDelphi.tv. A bit about me. I've been using Delphi since version 3. I'm an Embarcadero MVP, and you can find more about me and other great Delphi video tutorials at LearnDelphi.tv. This video is titled A Real-World Refactoring Example. I've used Delphi XE6 for this video, but many of the techniques discussed will be valid all the way back to Delphi 1. I think the automated refactorings were introduced in about Delphi 2006. Skill sprints are short one-skill tutorial sessions, with the demo portion taking about 20 minutes, or in my case 24 minutes 56 seconds. So moving on, as we want plenty of time for the Q&A. What is refactoring? Basically it's changing code without changing its external behavior. There's some pretty heavy methodology to go along with how to make these changes, which I'm playing extremely loose with in this tutorial. And finally, now for the demo. As I've gone over time, let's get stuck right in. I have an application here called Property Analyzer. It's an investment property analysis tool, which I wrote about 10 years ago, and some of the code in it is quite hideous, which makes it an excellent example for finding some refactorings. So let's just run it. And what we're going to do is refactor some of the code related to the calculations that produce all these numbers. So what I'm going to do is press Alt print screen and go to GIMP and paste in a copy of our report, and we're going to be using this for testing, so we can compare if the old report with new variations and verify that they are still the same. So if we have a look in the print method, we see there's this calculate future financials, and that's the bit of code we want to deal with. So I'll just control click into that. And if we pick something in here, such as this won't be subtle, so it'll be quite obvious the change, and run it again. Bring up our report, no big failures, but if I go hold the print screen and Control V, you may have seen the things change. We can toggle the visibility of the new layer and see that things are quite different. And even better, if I change this to difference, we can see the differences between the two images, and so it's an excellent way of detecting changes. So I'll just undo all that, come back and undo that change. So we're now going to extract all of this code into its very own unit. So we'll start by creating a new unit, and we'll call it calculate future financials, and we'll create a class. Now what we're going to be doing is a refactoring called extract method object. So we're going to take all of this code and extract it into its own class, and we're going to create a procedure called perform calculation. So what I'm going to do is just take all of this, of which there is lots and lots and lots. There's I think about 220 lines of code from memory, so I'm just scrolling to give you an idea of the task ahead. And let's paste that in like so. And we'll see that we've got lots and lots of errors we need to tidy up. Now, firstly, I can have a look at the client. You're going to see that with statements and all sorts of horrible things in here. I wrote this about 10 years ago, so my code is much better that I write today. But yeah, anyway, carrying on. So I'm going to use find. So it's in the refactoring menu. It's not really a refactoring, but it's quite handy. So find unit, which will tell us that we need to include, and I'm going to put in the interface, datasnap.db client. And there's also decode date, and I can use the shortcut key Control Shift A and DM data. Now another thing I'm going to do is take this procedure here, which is a nested procedure, which is sort of frowned upon these days. So I'm going to throw it out there and prefix it with the class name, and then press Ctrl-Shift-C to create the declaration in the private section. And I'll just undent that as well. These other red squigglies, these are form methods and variables and what have you. So with a lot of refactorings, you end up taking a couple of steps backwards to go forward, and that's what we're going to do by going use unit and unit 1, and we have, I'll just bookmark that, global variable f property analyzer, and I can throw that at the beginning of each of these problems. Oops. And almost done, and I think it's all of them, and I'll just verify that and see if we compile. Yes, we do, and we want to call our code in a new class, so we need to use the unit. And why that's not oh, it's probably private or something like that, but anyway, and let's go Ctrl-Shift-V. No, it won't. I'll right click and go refactor and go declare variable. Okay, and okay, that does indeed compile. So what we'll do now is we will run it, and fingers crossed, I'll go print, and we get our report, and I'll go Alt print screen, down to GIMP, paste it in as a new layer, and go difference, and we see it's completely black, so the two layers are identical. Our next step is to remove our dependency on our form. So we want to eliminate any sort of UI / business logic dependencies, and this is a rather nasty one at the moment. There's a number of ways we could do this. Probably one of the easy ones would be to add a whole bunch of properties to our calculate future financials class, such as capital gains, and then in here would say cff.capital gains equals get capital gains. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to add an interface. Now, one of the reasons for doing that is there are a couple of methods, get mortgage values, which we could probably shift into this class, but I'm instead going to extract an interface from f property analyzer. So let's do that now. So if we come up to the top of our class, what we want to do, and I have, as I've done this several times before, want to extract these methods, I think, into an interface. So I'm going to create a new unit. And rename it Property Analyzer Interface, because our form is called F Property Analyzer. And add a GUID in there as well. And basically, I'm just going to copy those and paste them in there. And up in our form, way up the top there, we're going to give it an iProperty Analyzer interface. So we can compile that, and of course we need to is it Control Shift? Okay, that's going to work. Interface. Okay, include that. Okay, now it's worth noting that with forms, and I think a lot of controls and components, they implement the add ref and the release ref in that they return -1, so that the reference counting doesn't actually have an effect. The sort of automated freeing of interfaces, which is what we want in this case, because we don't want our form to be freed. So that's quite convenient. So in our form calculation, if I scroll up, we're going to add a new parameter. In fact, I think there's a refactoring for adding parameters, but let's add Property Analyzer Interface. In fact, let's might as well use the refactoring menu. Okay, change parameters. I'm going to add and eventually parameter name. I'm going to call F Property Analyzer the same as our form. And we'll actually pass it as constant, as you should do with interfaces. And let's perform that refactoring. And I should also be able to remove unit 1. So let's compile that and see if I've okay, so we need to add a new it can be private. And it's going to return years. Oops. Get mortgage values. Oh, okay. So yes, we needed a couple more, and I think we need the next one down too. So we'll throw those on our interface. Okay, our refactoring didn't quite work properly. And in fact, I'll pass in self in that case. basically, we've just created a new interface. We've implemented that interface on our form, and rather than using our form, we are passing it in, passing in an interface, and I'll rename that. So it's a rename refactoring, which is probably the most commonly used. That and extract method are the two that I use, which I haven't covered extract method yet, which we will shortly, if we've got time. And that does indeed compile. Let's run that. Print, go alt print screen, paste it in, go difference, and they're exactly the same again. Our next step is that calculate future financials procedure, or TF property analyzer in general, has this dependency on calculate future financials, and thus a dependency on all this code. Now, dependencies, I like removing them where I can, and removing this one is quite straightforward. Basically, we're doing another extract interface refactoring. So we need a new interface, and so we'll do that in a new unit. I'll rename that calculate future financials interface. Okay, and that's going to have one method on it, oops, which is perform calculation. And we want to include the unit with our property analyzer interface. And we can come up here and say this is now descending from and I calculate future financials. Oops, Control Shift A. Okay, so there's another extract interface refactoring done, and come back here, we can say, oops, this is now NI future financials, and we don't need that. And I'm going to check that in the interface for now as well, rather than the implementation. Okay, so basically, so far we've eliminated a line of code by adding a whole heap around our interface. But what we can do is, rather than making that a local variable, I'm going to make it a public. Well, I could make it a property, but we'll just make it a field for now. And go to our main form. Let's go back here. Not main form, but our main unit, and inject that dependency. So if property analyzer that's correct. No parameters. Okay. And I can come up to our users, and we are no longer dependent on calculate future financials. So it's a pretty primitive form of dependency injection. Spring was much more sophisticated, but that's way more than we've got time to go into today. So just do alt print screen, back to GIMP, Control V, and different reference, and it's all black, so all good. We have pretty much run out of time, but I want to do one more refactoring, which is one that I use a lot, and that's extract method. And if we come down here and we have a quick look at some of this code, looking for something that's a reasonable candidate, let's look at this sort of while loop, and if we highlight that and go refactor extract method, we get a little preview. Now I tend to go through code and sort of highlight bits and do sort of these trial refactorings to see what parameters and things end up being present, to see if it extracts nicely. This is not too bad. We've got two things. It's calculating t, whatever that happens to be, which looks like something to do with the depreciation value. So it's rate times original value. So it's divided by hundreds. It's some sort of percentage, I guess. That's the percentage. So yeah, so it'll be some sort of value, depreciated value, something like that. So total depreciated value might be a valid variable name for that, but not totally certain. But actually, t, if we have a look around, we see, okay, t is being set to 0 here, and likewise with our Chettle's value. So we'll do a little bit of reordering of statements. We see there's no dependencies on these there, and if we have a look, highlight t and scroll down, and we see it's being used here. And so that's average depreciation, which is being assigned, so that's new effectively, and Chettle value, and that's also not being used in the above code, so we can actually shift that as well. So I guess at some stage this big block of code was injected, but really we want these to be together. So we've now got a slightly larger block, and Control-Shift-M, and we'll see that we've got our Chettle value and average depreciation, and t is now a local variable. And t should probably be a type currency or something, but anyway, likewise the Chettle value, but double is good enough. So I'm going to go ahead with this refactoring, and it's good to call it the method, of course, by what it does. So it's calculating the Chettle value and average depreciation. So when I've got long method names like this, that tends to indicate that it's doing too much, but I had a bit of a look at this earlier, and I couldn't see a nice mechanism of breaking it up into calculate Chettle value and calculate average depreciation as separate processes or separate methods. So we'll apply that. We've now extracted that chunk of code into a single method, and if we have a look at that method, it's now performing our calculations. And if I go back and look in here, you'll also see, or perhaps not, that the variable t has been removed and is now made local. So the refactoring engine is pretty smart for extract method. I have seen it go terribly wrong on occasion. Typically, it'll have unnecessary parameters or remove parameters. It's sort of the worst kind of thing I've seen. I've seen it crash in earlier versions of Delphi, but not XE6. I haven't had any problems with it at all in XE6 as yet, so fingers crossed. And we should, of course, do our testing primitive as it is, and of course it is the same. We've covered a number of refactorings in rather a crude fashion. However, in so doing, we've managed to somewhat improve our code quality, although it's still pretty hideous. Normally you wouldn't do refactorings just for the sake of it. Instead you'll be trying to add some feature, but want that feature to fit cleanly in with existing code. Our first refactoring was extract method object, where we took a method and created a whole new class around it. We then extracted an interface from our form to remove the dependency on the form in our code. And we then repeated the process in reverse to remove the dependency of our new code from the form. We then used the extract method refactoring to pull out a bit of code, reducing the size of the perform calculation method. We also squeezed in a couple of rename refactorings. Resources for general Delphi stuff. Watch more of my videos available on learndelphi.tv. I'd also like to highly recommend reading the Refactoring book by Martin Fowler, and there are a couple of IDE plugins that you can take advantage of that add some additional refactorings. I'm particularly fond of the Model Maker Code Explorer, but I've also used Castalia in the past.
Okay, and that's the skill sprint for today. And Jim, I made Alister an organizer. I'll unmute him.
Oh, good.
Yep. Alister, are you there?
G'day, I am indeed.
Excellent. For you, it's what is it?
Oh, wait. It's 1:30 in the morning.
Okay.
Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks for the great video.
I hope it was comprehensible. It's sort of I tried to squeeze sort of about an hour and a half worth of material into sort of less than 30 minutes, so it's a bit condensed. But
it was a bit.
One comment was speed of talking, but we'll get the replay up, and then people can play, pause, especially for the less than English speakers, for example. But no problem. I thought it was great.
Indeed, I do tend to talk quite fast, so I do try to talk a bit slower, but I find it difficult.
And the other thing for everyone, go to learndelphi.tv. Alister's got tons of videos, and he's also got a video course that you can purchase. And I put the first title slide back up. Oh, I should show that again, just so that people have it for that URL and your email address as well.
You have like 100 free videos, don't you? And then like a couple questions.
Yeah, I broke the 100 mark a couple of months ago, I think. In terms of Delphi videos, there's a few extra ones on SQL and some sorting algorithms used with playing cards, which are quite popular on YouTube. So yeah, there's quite a lot of content, and there's I think it's about 30 hours of commercial content there, or something like that. So there's quite a lot available there, mostly focused on the VCL.
Troy says thanks a lot for your videos, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, so we do have some questions here. Bruce is curious what you're using to display the control key combinations on the screen during your video.
Okay, so that's a feature of Camtasia Studio or Camtasia Recorder, in that you can add all the keystrokes, or sort of all the unusual keystrokes, you know, by I think it's right-clicking on it. No, it's a menu in the edit menu or something like that. Add keystroke callouts or something.
So now this was an Object Pascal, but does this similar stuff available with C++?
I am not a C++ guy, so I believe some of the refactorings are available, but I'm not sure.
There's a rename refactoring for C++ in the IDE. Otherwise, you need to explore other tools. We don't do this depth.
Okay.
Anything other than Object Pascal. And the same, I think, for Model Maker and for Castalia as well. But I'll see if I can find one.
In our skill sprint last week on find C++ 11 references, that had a couple useful things in it there as well.
Yeah, I think the C++ language is significantly more complicated than Object Pascal, so I'm not surprised there aren't all the refactorings there.
So the comparing images trick, what did you use? How did you do that?
Okay, so that's by using GIMP, which is a free image editing program. You can probably do a similar thing in other sort of, that have image editors that have layering. So basically, normally two layers, basically the transparent bits sort of show through and what have you, but you can use other methods of combining layers, and one of them is this difference. So it subtracts one layer from the other, and basically when you subtract two pixels that are identical, you get a black pixel.
Okay. And then you're out of New Zealand, right?
That's correct. So if you want to be a bit more specific, exact, it's sort of Porirua, New Zealand, which is sort of near Wellington, which is the capital. I live on a lifestyle block, and I've been having a bit of trouble with my internet connection lately. It's been going in and out, which is one of the joys of living sort of a bit out in the middle of nowhere.
So a lot of comments here, people saying thanks for the video, it was very useful. Here's another question. What were the buttons that you used in your project there?
The buttons. They were, I actually, so this program I wrote about 10 years ago, and I wrote a component called TL image button, which basically it combines two images. One is the image of the button and the other is the little icon on the button. It's pretty horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, pulling out code I wrote 10 years ago would be painful for me.
Oh man, I was just going over it. It's quite embarrassing. The you know, like with statements, and I had one there, which is, you know, with data module, comma, data set do, and it's like, oh my goodness. So the kind of code that makes you feel physically ill to look at.
How did you get the colored lines from begins and ends and tri-families and some other highlighting you had going on there?
Okay, so that's a tool called CNPack. CN is in China. It's a group of sort of Chinese Delphi developers that have got this sort of series of CN wizards, I suppose, is what they're technically called. But if you go to cnpack.org, you can download sort of the latest version. And I have a video on using a couple of features, actually two videos, I think.
That's right, you do. I remember seeing that one.
So no, I really find the structural highlighting really helpful in really, you see these long procedures. I deal with a lot of legacy code, and this you know, procedures hundreds and hundreds of lines long, nested. I was looking at some code. There was a 600-line procedure. It had 65 variables. I think it was about 18 or 20 levels nested deep, and there were 4 loops with I, J, K, and L loop variables. So it was quite horrendous.
Wow. So I was asking if there's an easy way to eliminate unused units from a unit so that you're not including things that aren't necessary?
Yes. The two tools I use for that, actually 3 actually. The first is there's a in CNPack, there's a uses analyzer which can go through your project and sort of automatically remove stuff. It gives you sort of an opportunity to tick and untick what you want to remove. And it's quite good because it recognizes things like if you've got initialization and stuff like that in a unit, you might not want to remove it from your project. And there's another tool called Icarus, which is a free one. It's by Peganza, so peganza.com, and it's pretty good. It also tells you what you can move from the interface section to the implementation, so you can sort of tidy up in that respect as well. And if you want to go sort of the sort of whole hog, there's a Peganza also make a tool called Pascal Analyzer, which does the uses analyzer as well.
Ah.
And yeah, I quite like Pascal Analyzer because it does a lot of static code analysis and spots all sorts of sort of defects.
It seems like I remember GExpert having a feature did that a while ago, but I haven't used GExpert recently, so which is another free wizard pack similar to CNPack.
Indeed.
I don't think it's being maintained as actively, it seems like, but that could be me. It probably is, and I'm just insulted somebody. I apologize.
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing I'm going to comment about your video is it was a good showing of some things you want to look for in refactoring, and then I like the way you did the little short tests. You know, I've never thought of doing that test of the screen diff to make sure it stays exactly the same, because that's the idea, is you don't want to change the functionality.
Indeed, and a lot of code, a lot of legacy code, it's impossible to wrap any usable test, any real tests around it. You can use a tool like Test Complete, and I think there's a free one as well that allows you to automate your application and sort of fill certain things in certain edit boxes, and then press a button, and then look at the result in another, in a text label or something like that, which is very powerful, but it's also very expensive, and the tests tend to be very fragile, particularly if you're redesigning your interface.
Yeah.
But when you're doing refactoring, you definitely want to have some mechanism for doing tests.
So here's a refactoring question. It says, I have several units that I need to convert to classes. Any hints? So I guess make all the stuff in a unit into a class instead of procedural code into class-based code?
Well, you could start just by wrapping every function and procedure, have one big mega class to start with, and then sort of divide it up sort of according to how the sort of relationships, how what functions relate to each other, and then I suppose everything would be a class function initially, and then you could sort of look at what sort of instance information that you want to store, sort of the fields and what have you.
Yeah, I might chime in one other suggestion, that if you have code with methods that are testable, and you're going to refactor parts out of that code, having unit tests for some of those methods, so when you do the refactoring, run a unit test to make sure you didn't break the surrounding method that you might have pulled something or extracted a method out of, is always good if you have unit testable code. It's not user interface or as you were doing the output. Using GIMP is a great idea to check output that's happening to make sure the same results are coming with the same data sets.
Yeah, of course it's not a comprehensive sort of test, because there might be stuff that breaks without the that particular report.
Yeah, it's for different code paths. Yep.
Yeah, for instance, in that I have sort of interest-only mortgages, and if I have an actual P&I type mortgage, then I might break something related to that. But
okay, great. So I think we've got most of the questions, all the questions answered here. Lots of good information. There's one request that maybe if you had a blog post that linked through some of your favorite tools that you use, the tools you use today, for example, and some recommended tools that might be useful for people looking for some great tools so they can take advantage of some of the cool features you showed there with the coloring and so whatnot.
Yep, no, definitely. It's worth checking out I think I've got 2 videos on CNPAC, and worth looking at in that regard.
Yeah, I will echo some. I think Bruce mentioned as well. Anybody that's wanting to learn more about programming, I highly recommend your videos. There's some good stuff out there. I learned stuff in this video, and I've learned stuff in some of the other videos as well.
Yeah, if people go to learndelphi.tv, there's a search box, and I put in CNPAC, for example, and then it finds an interview with Jim McKeith as well. Several videos in the over 100 videos. So just go to learndelphi.tv, and if you're looking for something that Alister may have done a video on, use the search box.
What was the tool you were using to compare the reports each time?
So I was using an image editor called GIMP, which is a free open source image editor. I use it a lot for all sorts of things, but what I was doing there was basically pasting in the original and then pasting a new layer over the top for my sort of test version, and then doing a instead of adding the 2 layers, I do the difference. So each pixel is subtracted from the one above it, and if everything is the same, you end up with lots of black pixels.
Yeah. Okay. So who was the author of the book on refactoring?
It's Martin Fowler. He's quite a famous author.
It's F-O-U-L. I can't. F-O-U-L.
W-L-E-R, I think.
Yeah. I'm not sure why I'm having trouble spelling today, so all these questions are going to be interesting to read. Does refactoring appear in all versions, Pro, Enterprise, Architect, etc.?
I don't know.
It does. I'm pretty. Yeah, it's in all of them. Yeah. So what's the purpose? The purpose of refactoring here is essentially cleaning up source code to make it more readable and maintainable. But if a developer sets a plan in the beginning, they wouldn't need to do any sort of refactoring. I guess that's the question: is if you plan ahead, do you still need refactoring?
Plan everything in advance. Typically, you can plan a certain extent and have some architecture in mind, but it often, as you get into coding, often doesn't work out how you initially envisage things. And refactoring gives you a way to sort of shift your code around so that it stays clean.
Yeah, you really want to do both. Yeah, you're right. You don't. Yeah, I agree with you. It takes both. So you're using CNPAC, it was running there to do the highlighting, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm quite fond of it.
And I think you have a video on your site that covers some of the more details of CNPAC.
Yeah, there's a couple of videos. One's on the structural highlighting, and the other is on sort of automated component renaming, which is quite handy.
Yes, it will. Yeah. So there's a question also about cleaning up your uses section on your unit.
Yes, you can either be extremely diligent and know what every part of sort of what's used in each unit. However, that sort of becomes quite difficult, and you can try commenting out units and seeing if your application still compiles. But the easiest way to do it is using one of two utilities. One is CNPAC, which has a uses clause, uses cleaner, and that'll do that for you automatically, and it has a bunch of options allowing you to not do units with initialization sections and things like that, which you may need to keep in your code. The other is Icarus by Beginza, which is sort of an extremely cut-down version of the Pascal analyzer, and it only does the analysis. You have to do the code changes yourself, but it does tell you what units can be shifted from the interface section down to sort of below the code. Sorry, below the gosh, I'm quite tired. Implementation, thank you.
Yeah, I understand.
All right, Alister, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for being with us. Take care. We'll see you next Tuesday. What's next Tuesday? Behavior-driven development with Roman Yankowski.